Hello and welcome once again to the Dwarven Tavern. I am your host, Lyric, and this time we are bringing you another review. This one is going to be about one of the three, I guess I could call them mini-books, about adventures set in the Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Those include The Towers 2, not sure what that one's about, The Ideas from Space, again, not sure what that one's about, because this time we are doing The Cursed Chateau, which I'm assuming is set in France, because a lot of these names are French. I'm going to go ahead and read a little excerpt, but my favorite part so far is the emblem on the front, the house colors, if you will. In Latin, it says non omnis moriar, which means not everything dies. I don't speak Latin, I looked that up beforehand so that I would sound smart. So, introduction is by the author, and then the background is talking about the lord of the manor in which you will be placed in, and I'm just diving right into it so I don't bore you with any of this exposition, I should say. It is Lord Jourdain. I don't know, I'm really rusty on my French pronunciation, but Jourdain Ayarai? That doesn't sound French at all. I'm just going to call him Jourdain. If I'm wrong, please correct me, but my number one rule still stands. Always include pronunciation guides if you have if you're using a language that is not common, if you will. For example, I'm not saying it should be English, I'm saying it should be, if you are using a language that is not the common language of your audience, then you should include a pronunciation guide to it. For example, if you're selling your stuff in, say, Germany, and you have written the book in, say, English, you should probably include some pronunciation things, just to help people out. So, moving right along. Lord Jourdain was the scion of a long line of aristocrats in the remote province of France, known as Auvergne, I don't know, in the local Occitan dialect. I'm guessing that's why his name sounds not French. His family has been wealthy and influential for longer than any could remember. An only child, his parents died when he was 4 years old, entrusting him to older relatives and servants, who cared for his education and upbringing. A precocious, charming boy, Lord Jourdain matured, first into a vain, dissolute youth and then to a jaded, venal adult. He had the power, money, and influence to satisfy his every desire, and did so. But it was not enough to overcome his ennui, I think that's right. So he turned to necromancy, black magic, and eventually devilry, blah blah blah. He killed and dismembered and put back together people and servants and slaves, and delved into the occult and whatnot. I'm not going to read the entire background because it's not very long, but I don't want to stay on that. I don't want to focus on it too long. So, basically, the head of the household was a very distraught person and delved into black magic and things he shouldn't, and created his chateau to be a cursed chateau. There are many hauntings in this particular manor, and they actually have a whole section to just talking about those people. I'm not going to get into it just yet, but he cannot manifest himself for very long. He can, however, influence events within his own home and command his now undead servants. So he is kind of the headmaster in quite a few senses. And where does your character fit into this? Well, before I go any deeper into it, this is actually a storyline that you can play with characters that you've rolled up with either the Flame Princess role-playing game, Yeah, Flame Princess, Weird Fantasy, Role-Playing, and the like. And, oh, that wasn't even the full title. Lamentations of the Flame Princess, Weird Fantasy, Role-Playing. And other role-playing games. So you can play this with either their main role-playing game, which I do not have, or you can play it with Dungeons & Dragons, or Pathfinder, or World of Darkness, or pretty much any other basic role-playing game. You might have to tweak a few rules depending on which game you're playing, but at the same time, I don't think you'd have to venture very far out into those things, because this deals with a D20 system, and D20 is very malleable in its rules. So, moving on, depending on how the referee, which is the game master, dungeon master, the storyteller, however you want to call it, it's the referee in this game, intends to use this character, the characters can become involved in several ways. First, they may simply stumble upon the chateau while traveling through Taverneer, and then enter it unaware of its curse. Second, the character may have heard the tales of the chateau, Le Jardin, or seek the curse affecting both and seek out to see for themselves. Finally, a distant relative of Lord Jourdain might employ the characters to explore the chateau so that he may lay claim to an inheritance. Other possibilities exist, of course, and the referee is encouraged to use. So, what I would do is, if I were to play this character, I would be one of the ones that is seeking out the stories in hopes that I could release their spirits from the damnation that they are experiencing. And because I am all about that, full-hearted goodness in one's heart. Also, I really enjoy the artwork. Look at that, there's a penis. And I like that it's 3 colors. It's black, white, and gold, and it's very metallic, and I think that is absolutely gorgeous. Also, fun thing about this book is that it's got a bunch of maps of the grounds that you would be exploring. So you will not want for anything in this book. And then the back is the random events that can occur. So, moving on to the next bit is the characters, I believe. So there's the introduction, the background, the random events that can happen. They have a lot in here. Okay, then it goes into the structure of the chateau. It goes into the different areas, such as the barrier, which Lord Jourdain can create a barrier that it's the magical enclosement of the chateau, which means you cannot get out. And I'm sure there's ways, I haven't delved too deep into the storyline, but I'm pretty sure there's ways that you can get through, but getting out would probably be harder. So you can use guidelines as specified, I guess, on page 27, and you can get in and out depending on your character's desire. If you're like me, you'd probably get really scared within the first 20 minutes and want to leave, but that's the main point of this story, is that you can't leave. You're probably destined to become another one of his undead servants. So, and then the household staff and using them, a note about the language, because they speak Occitan, and it's a Romance language related to French, but distinct from it. Therefore, the house staff of the chateau also speak it. So you can use the languages in this particular, the Flame Princess role-playing game. You can use the language rules in it. But if you don't know about it, you don't have to. So that's what I like about this little thing, is that it gives you the option to choose if you want to do it with the games that you already know and are familiar with, or if you want to do it with this game or this main role-playing game that this is based off of, and explore new worlds that you have otherwise not seen. So here are a glimpse of the servants and the chefs and the maids and so on and so forth, people that got killed in his wrath. I think Isabelle is the saddest, in my personal opinion, and I will read 2 of them to show you what I'm talking about. Let's pick a small one. Okay, let's just do Rixenda and Isabelle. So Older and plainer than Lorenza, Rixinda was the chateau's chambermaid and thus had access to the bedrooms of the chateau. She has come to Jourdain's service after fleeing an abusive marriage, and her body bore scars from the beating she received at the hands of her husband. That was a very wordy sentence. Her husband once came to the chateau looking for her, and the master had Martin beat him to death so that he would never harm her again, thereby earning her undying loyalty. Rixinda now bears only passing resemblance of her living self. She is wild-eyed and bestial and survives on the diet of human flesh, preferring that it be of human beings. I mixed the words together. So, she has an armor 14, move of 90 feet. Jesus. Hit die is, I guess, 13 HP, 2 claws, 1d4 damage each, and morale of 12. Anyone struck by Rixinda must save versus paralyzation or be paralyzed for 3d6 turns. That sucks, and she looks horrifying. Let me just show you how she looks real quick. She's very, like, dead in the face. So, Isabel is, in his blasphemous black masses, Jourdain needs a young and virginal woman whose naked body would serve as his altar. Kinky. He found such a woman in Isabel, whom he brought to the chateau after searching across southern France for a perfect woman, with all the right qualities he sought. Though ostensibly a maid, Jourdain treated her very well and provided for her every need. They use provided twice in the sentence and it tripped me up. Provided she need leave his domain and that she perform her quote-unquote religious duties without complaint. Don't worry, none sexual, because she had to be a virgin. In that time, Juan, I do not know how to pronounce half of these names, seduced Isabel, and her deflowering made her no longer suitable for Jourdain's purposes. He killed Juan, I'm going to call it Juan, in retaliation, and Isabel, her sanity already tenuous by this point, because you would be that way as well if your body was used for satanic rituals. Her sanity, it took her own life by drinking poison. He tried to reanimate her like his other servants, but for some reason the process did not work as he had hoped, and the result was a semi-corporeal ghost-like being with transparent skin who spent most of her undead existence weeping because she had a shitty life. And then her armor's 12, move is 50 feet. Is there movement 50 feet for all of them? No, just a lot of them. Move it 60 or 50 feet, it seems. She has a higher hit die at 29, 1 touch, 1d8, and morale of 12. Her weeping requires saving throw versus magic by all within 10 feet of her. Those who fail will suffer a random effect for the next 5 rounds. They don't play around. They're like, it's 5 rounds, whether you like it or not. And they include attack Isabel, no effect, uncontrollable weeping, wanders away, and attack allies. Isabel is incorporeal because she is a sad, sad woman. Anyway, moving on. The next bit is talking about the turning undead, energy drain, dying within the chateau, things that are very important when it comes to these types of gameplay. Let's move on. Escaping the chateau. This is a very important one, so let's just whip on this a little bit. As noted previously, Lord Jourdain traps anyone who enters the grounds in his chateau in the hopes that they might entertain him sufficiently to free him from his ennui and thus sever the spiritual link to his former home. Thus far, he has only limited evidence that this is even possible, since all of his previous quote-unquote visitors to the chateau have died before he could fully put his theory to the test, but he continues to try nevertheless. Fortunately for the characters, Lord Jourdain is in fact correct. Unfortunately for them, freeing his consciousness requires that those trapped not merely suffer misfortune at his hands, but that they survive long enough to suffer enough misfortune to divert him and thereby lifting the curse. So, basically what this is saying is that in order to break the curse that Jourdain has put himself in, you have to suffer a lot and probably more than likely 98% chance you're gonna die. So, and there's no guarantee that it'll even work to begin with. I'm not quite sure where those particular rules lay. Let's just read a little bit more just to really talk about it. To do that, the referee should keep track of Jourdain's fun as the characters explore the chateau. Jourdain's fun starts at 0 and increases according to the table opposite. The list is not exhaustive by any means. The referee should add his own conditions to the list using those here as the guideline, which this is the list that they're talking about. All nice and neat on the next page. In general, positive or beneficial actions bore Lord Jourdain and thus lower the running tally of Jourdain's fun, while negative or harmful actions entertain him and thus increase it. AKA, you have to suffer a lot, as I previously mentioned. If through the player character's actions Jourdain's fun reaches 100, they will then hear a disembodied voice shout, "The curse is lifted! I am free!" That's my horrible French accent for you. The chateau continues as it did before, except the referee no longer rolls like the random events table. Likewise, any creatures created through the agency of Lord Jourdain, such as the household staff, collapse immediately into dust. So, that means that the curse is lifted, but, things can still dwell in those halls. Let's just look at the funds list real quick. The first one is a +1 per 2 points of damage suffered by any player character. This is cumulative. And then moving on, +10 per act of kindness shown toward Guillaume or Isabelle, that would be me. I would always want to be kind to Isabelle because her life sucked. -1 point, -1 per 1 point of damage healed. -10 if the bones of Isabelle at the area of M12, see page 36, which I'm assuming is some sort of a specific location, are in any way disturbed, so on and so forth. Again, I really like the artwork. It's nice and minimalist, but also gives a lot of freaking detail. So the next part is the chateau. This is laying it out all nice and neat for you. Things like lighting and paintings and other room contents is laid out there, all nice and neat. There is the hedge maids, which goes into detail in the next page, as you can see. So M12 is right here, as I previously mentioned. That is where Isabelle's graves are. And it gives these little dots in the maze are all outlined as to what they are in the rest of the book. So that's pretty cool. I'm not going to get into any of that. Let's just go with M22, toward the exit. The tree here was formerly an apple tree, but is now dead. Its bark has been elaborately carved with the grinning skulls and demonic faces. So, the whole chateau is pretty much along the same theme. Except the artwork is just beautiful, and I love it very much. That's like a giant point for Lyric, is the beautiful artwork. And the detail, and the tables, and all that stuff. Very beautiful. Then it has the chateau grounds, another nice and neat map, which I'm pretty sure is, it's the first one on the back cover of the front cover. And then all of the details therein, the stables, the kennels, the outhouse, so on and so forth. Ground floor, another nice and beautiful page right there. Porch, the armory, pantry, I almost said panties, kitchen, chef's quarters, so on and so forth. Just things that you would find in these particular areas. Specific people that may be lurking in those areas. For example, the parlor. The parlor is where Lord Jourdain greeted guests and conversed with them while they waited for a dinner to be served in the nearby hall. The room contains the remnants of many luxurious chairs and sofas. The only item in the room immune to the passage of time are 3 different portraits of Lord Jourdain, each one depicting him in different ages, as a child, as a youth, and as he was the time shortly before his suicide. Removal of the portrait destroys any magical qualities it possesses, and angers Lord Jourdain, resulting in an immediate roll of the Jourdain Fund table. So, that's not a great example, but it does show that everything in the house has some sort of element relating to specific characters. Here's another nice and neat little painting. The upper floor is next. Again, I'm not going to go too deep into these because I would be here all night. There's a lot of detail. A lot of clear detail, like nothing is lost in translation. They said they got out exactly what they wanted to, and having the graphs and the tables and the maps all lined out nice and neat for you, it definitely helps a lot. Frog, which I'm sure is important, but I haven't read anything about it. Then the basement, the storage room, the wine cellar, servants' quarters, so on and so forth. Oh wait, I lied. That was part of the basement, yeah. Oh, it has torture chambers. Lovely. I think I already mentioned that though. An underground lake, which is cool. Yeah, here we go. This is the frog mentioned. This large cave is the site of the freshwater lake. Located at the edge of the lake is a stone altar carved with the demonic frog-like images. Its surface is covered with brown stains, and there are bone fragments that litter the area around it. When he was alive, Lord Jourdain used this altar to summon the lake's inhabitants by offering them sacrifices. The lake is but one small part of a much larger subterranean water system that extends deep beneath the earth. So these creatures that I showed you before were part of the lake's inhabitants, and they were very demonic in doing so. Saying there's another picture of them. They're demonic frogs. Armor 14. 6 hit dice, which includes 39 and 37 HP, 1 bite doing 1d10 damage plus poison, a morale of 11, so they're easily shook. Torture chamber, which it goes into detail about, and that is it. It has a reference tables of individual people and their points. Jourdain's fun, once again. And lastly, another recovery of the D100 table. So, that's that. It's a very short, sweet, small little book that I got from James Maliszewski, Jez Gordon, and Yannick Bouchard. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing those names right. I really hope so. If I'm not, please correct me below. This is a kind of a I'm not quite sure what they're called, but they are. Oh, look at that, more penises on this book. Okay, so anyway, this is a storyline that you can use in another game. You can roll up characters with Pathfinder, Dungeons and Dragons, even with the Lamentations of the Flame Princess Weird Fantasy Role-Playing Series. There's a mouthful, but I'm sure it's good. I don't have a copy of it. Maybe I can hunt one down at Gen Con this year. But I would like to explore this a little bit more in depth. The artwork is glorious. It's very beautiful. I'm guessing that's Isabel on the front cover. She looks very sad, and I feel very bad for her. I just want to help. So I definitely want to check this out in further detail, as in playing it. So I think a Pathfinder or like a D20 character would be fine. Maybe a modern character would be better. I know there's a particular D20 series that has Victorian, because it sounds like it's set in the Victorian era, style characters, like it's like, well, the Wild West and stuff like that. But this is definitely a story that you should try out for yourselves. I will do the other two in a different review if you're interested in that, so again, please comment below. And without further ado, the Dwarven Tavern gives this, I don't know, I really couldn't find anything wrong with it. The pronunciation guide, it really bugs me in this one more than other series, because pretty much every name that you come across in this book is different. I can't really say that would give it bad marks, though. The decoration of the book, in both its graphs and tables and maps and character layouts and the artwork itself, is all very beautiful, and I don't think I can give this a bad mark. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. And this is definitely a book if you're into like playing games about the occult or horror stories or mystery murders and stuff like that. This isn't a game for you if you're after fantasy. I mean, it's got fantasy aspect in it, but it's mostly horror and gore and darkness and destruction. So I would definitely check this out if you're into the more pulp, occult style of stuff, and not if you're into like action movies or stuff like that. So that was the Cursed Chateau by, I'm not quite sure what company this belongs to, but it's part of the Lamentations of the Flame Princess role-playing series. It probably works best with that, so check that out as well. Maybe I can secure a book for that at Gen Con, so I can review that as well for you guys. And if you have played this game and have any other things that you would like to mention, or if I skipped over something really important that you wanted me to talk about, please comment below. I would love to hear it. And if you guys want us to review anything else very specific, please let us know, and we will try and seek those games out as well. But until then, the Cursed Chateau gets a 5 out of 5 with the Dwarven Tavern. And I am Lear Goins, wishing for you to want for nothing but adventure. And at first I feared it, then I charged. Thanks for watching, and we will always see you next time. That makes it sound like you have to come see us. You don't have to, but it's always encouraged. So, we will see you next time.